Ever annoyed someone so bad by obeying them? They told me to stop being difficult and just follow the rules. So I did. Every single one. Exactly as written. And by the end of the week, they were the ones begging for mercy. It started with a curfew. That's all it was, at first. Be home by 8:00 p.m. or don't come home at all. That's what my dad said. Word for word. He had that habit of saying things he didn't mean and then doubling down when you acted like he meant them. I was 17, not stupid, not rebellious, just tired. Tired of the shifting goalposts. One day the rule was to call if I was running late. The next day it was, you're old enough to be responsible without us chasing you. So when they gave me the list, printed, taped to the fridge, initialed at the bottom like it was a legal document, I told myself, okay. Let's see what happens when I follow the rules better than they do. Rule number 1, no food outside the kitchen. Simple enough. So I stopped eating anywhere else. Didn't even touch a granola bar unless I was standing in front of the fridge. I didn't eat on the porch. Not in my room. Not in the car on the way to school. If I was hungry and not in the kitchen, I waited. Even at night, my dad found out the first time when I declined a slice of birthday cake in the living room. Rules are rules, I said. And I smiled. He didn't. Rule number 2, no locked doors. Ever. That one was clearly written with me in mind. I used to lock my door when I needed space. So I followed it. All of them. I took it further. Bathroom door? Open. Bedroom? Open. Closet? Propped. My dad walked in on me changing once and I didn't flinch. Just said, you said no locked doors. He left without a word. But I noticed he started knocking again after that. Just in case. Rule number 3, speak with respect. That was my mom's favorite. So I started speaking with absolute textbook politeness. Yes, ma'am. No, sir. I appreciate your feedback. Would you be so kind as to pass the salt? I did it with a straight face. Never sarcastic. It wasn't mocking. It was sincere. And that's what made it worse. I saw the way her jaw clenched every time I answered like a hotel receptionist. She hated it. She wanted emotion, struggle, resistance, not icy compliance. But I was playing by the rules. Rule number 4, no electronics after 9:00 p.m. So I powered everything off at 8:59. No phone, no laptop, no TV. And because I couldn't sleep, I just sat there in bed, staring at the ceiling. Sometimes I'd hum, softly, enough that it wouldn't be a noise violation per the list. But just loud enough to make them wonder if I was awake. I didn't sleep well, but I didn't break the rule either. By the 4th night, things were already tense. My dad started asking if I was okay. My mom said I was being passive-aggressive. I told them, I'm just following the rules. That was the first time my mom raised her voice. She said, you know exactly what you're doing. And I just looked at her and said, yes. I'm doing exactly what you asked. Then I folded the laundry. In silence. But the rule that broke them, the one that really made the house unravel, was rule number 8, clean up after yourself immediately. No dishes left in the sink. No mess in shared spaces. Always reset the room. That one was written for accountability. But when I followed it, they couldn't keep up. If I poured cereal, I washed the bowl before one took a bite. If I took off my shoes, I lined them up perfectly. I wiped down the bathroom sink after every use. I folded the toilet paper and like in a hotel. And every time I walked through the living room and saw their stuff, mugs, jackets, old receipts, I'd neatly gather it, put it in a labeled bin, and leave it on their bed with a sticky note, reminder, rule number 8. The tension wasn't loud. It was brittle, quiet. My mom stopped smiling at me in the morning. My dad didn't say goodnight. But I could feel them watching. Waiting for me to slip. To do something they could call disrespectful. But I didn't. I played it straight. By the end of the week, something cracked. It was Saturday, 7:43 p.m. I was at the kitchen table, eating dinner. Only in the kitchen. Lights on. No phone. Plate washed. Chair pushed in after I stood. My mom came in, opened the fridge, and said, are you planning to go out later? I said, no, ma'am. She asked why. I said, because rule number 5 says curfew is 8:00 p.m. and I wouldn't want to risk it. She stared at me for a long time. Then, very softly, she said, this isn't normal. You're acting like a robot. I said, I'm acting like a son who respects your rules. She said, it's not funny anymore. And I said, I'm not laughing. That was the moment she walked out. No yelling, no crying, just left the room. My dad came in a few minutes later and sat across from me. He looked tired, older than usual. He rubbed his face and said, this isn't what we meant. I didn't say anything. He said, we wanted you to be responsible, not clinical. And I finally asked the question I'd been waiting to ask all week. Was the problem really that I didn't follow the rules before, or that I didn't follow them your way? He didn't answer. But the next morning, the list was gone from the fridge. That morning felt different. The list was gone, but no one said anything. The tape residue where it used to hang still clung to the fridge, a faint rectangle outlining the control they thought they had. My dad left early, didn't say where he was going. My mom pretended to scroll through her phone, but her thumb didn't move. I poured a bowl of cereal, washed the spoon before using it, sat at the table and ate, facing forward. No distractions, just quiet chewing and the hum of the fridge compressor. At exactly 8:57 a.m., I stood, washed my bowl, wiped the counter, reset the chair under the table, and walked to my room. Left the door open. I didn't change the system just because they had. That would have given them control back. It's strange how people only notice the rules once they're applied with total consistency. Before, they were suggestions, weapons they could wield when it was convenient. A messy plate meant I was lazy. A closed door meant I was secretive. But when I held the same standard to them, when I pointed out the coffee mug my dad left on the end table or the bathroom light my mom forgot to turn off, suddenly it was hostile. Controlling. Vindictive. I stayed in that pattern for another 3 days. Never raised my voice. Never changed the tempo. I was calm, polite, precise. It was driving them mad. On Wednesday night, they called a family talk. That's how my mom put it. She sat at the dining room table like it was a mediation. My dad had a notepad in front of him, though he never opened it. I sat down with my hands folded in my lap. Quiet. Ready. She started. We feel like you're being intentionally manipulative. I nodded. I understand that's how it feels. We want to be able to communicate openly. Not with tactics. I waited. My dad leaned forward. Are you trying to punish us for something? I said, I'm trying to respect your expectations. You asked me to follow the rules. That's what I've done. That's not what this is, my mom snapped. I tilted my head. Could you clarify? That pushed her over. She stood up so fast the chair legs screeched against the tile. This is not how families work, she said. You're treating us like clients or enemies. I said nothing. My dad spoke quieter. It feels like you're showing us how hard you can make things. Like you're proving a point. I kept my voice low, level. I'm proving that I listened. He stared at me for a long time. Then he nodded once, almost imperceptibly. You've made your point. And just like that, the rules were gone. But here's the thing, I didn't stop. Even after they relented, I kept following every single rule. Not to make a point anymore. Not even out of spite. I'd started to realize something else entirely. The rules had never been mine, but they were how I survived. As long as I kept control over the pattern, I couldn't be caught off guard. They could no longer use my chaos against me, because I had none. Every action was accounted for. Every word measured. And in that space, I found peace. The house became quieter. My parents didn't yell anymore, because they didn't know how to reach me. Not with guilt. Not with praise. Not with family talks. I had created a system so airtight that even I couldn't escape it. And that was the part one didn't expect. Eventually, they gave up. Not in the dramatic way. No screaming, no slammed doors. Just silence. They stopped commenting on my behavior. They stopped trying to correct me. They started treating me like a guest in the house, someone who kept their shoes clean and their voice down. Someone they couldn't connect with anymore. And the funny thing is, it worked. I graduated 6 months later. Left for college the following fall. We said our goodbyes, and they were exactly what you'd expect, polite, brief, slightly distant. No hugs. Just firm nods and a call us when you get there. I never did, because by that point, I'd already learned the most important rule of all, the one they never wrote down but lived by without question. Control is only comforting when you're the one holding it. And once I took it back, once I showed them what obedience actually looks like, they couldn't recognize their own house anymore. Neither could I. College was supposed to be my clean slate. New city, new routine, no fridge lists. No parental standoffs dressed up as boundaries. But when you spend long enough inside a system like that, when every move becomes a calculated response to an invisible checklist, you don't just walk away from it. You bring it with you. I didn't realize how deep it had gotten until my first week in the dorms. My roommate, Kyle, was a chaos machine. He came in blasting music, dropped his bag in the middle of the floor, kicked off his shoes without even untying them. The night he spilled ramen on his desk and wiped it up the next morning. I actually had to leave the room. He wasn't trying to get under my skin. He was just normal, but I'd spent so long tightening every bolt in my life that watching someone live without tension felt unsafe. So I made a rule list for myself. Not printed, not taped anywhere, just written, one night, on the back of my planner. Not to control anyone else, just to make the space feel predictable again. It started simple. Wake up at 6:45 a.m. Make bed completely, tight corners, blanket crease centered. Eat breakfast in one sitting, in the dining hall only. Finish assignments the day they're assigned. Lights out by 10:00 p.m., headphones only after 9:00. It wasn't about discipline, it was about insulation, structure. Kyle didn't notice at first. But by the end of the second week, he made a joke, "You're like living with a monk, man. Chill out." I smiled, said nothing, because what I couldn't explain, not then, maybe not even now, is that the rules weren't about not being myself. They were myself. Or at least, the version that made sense. The version that kept the chaos out. But Kyle was patient, unbothered. He'd crash into the room at midnight some nights, toss his keys onto the windowsill, fall asleep with music still playing through his phone speaker. I started sleeping with earplugs. Not because I resented him, but because I couldn't handle the unpredictability. Then, 3 weeks in, he tried to include me. There was this house party off campus. Someone he knew from his econ class. He asked if I wanted to come. Just once. I said, I don't drink. He said, you don't have to. Just come hang. I told him, it's not part of my schedule. He laughed. Thought I was joking. I wasn't. That night, I stayed in. Studied. Cleaned the room. Aligned the books on the shelf by height, then by color, then by spine thickness. He came back at 2:30 a.m., a little buzzed but steady. And I pretended to be asleep. The next morning, he made breakfast for both of us. Didn't ask. Just did it. Laid it out on the desk. Eggs, toast, coffee, 2 plastic forks. No ceremony. No noise. And I didn't know what to do with that. Because it broke the rhythm. He wasn't following the rules. But it wasn't disrespect. It was kindness. And that confused me more than any curfew or consequence ever had. I sat down. Ate in silence. He didn't say a word. But from that morning on, he started picking up after himself. Not everything. Not obsessively. Just enough. Enough for me to notice. One night, I came back from the library and the lights were dimmed. Desk cleared. My laundry, which I'd left in the dryer, folded and stacked neatly on my bed. Sticky note on top. Didn't touch your closet. Hope that's okay. And something cracked a little. Not like it had at home. Not like revenge or control or proving a point. More like relief. Like someone had seen the whole cage and chosen not to rattle it. We never talked about it directly. But over time, the rules loosened. I left my planner open some nights. Skipped a study block without guilt. Let my shoes sit in the middle of the floor for a full hour once before I picked them up. Tiny rebellions. Not against anyone else, just against the idea that obedience was my only defense. And one day, Kyle said something I'll never forget. It was finals week. We were both fried, sitting in silence, eating cereal out of mugs. He looked at me and said, you know, sometimes I think people like you are the strongest ones. Not because you follow rules, but because you know how to use them. I asked him what he meant. He said, most people either break rules or follow them blindly. But you know how to weaponize them. Like a shield. I thought about that for a long time. Because I hadn't realized that was what I'd been doing. Not until he said it. That conversation with Kyle sat with me for weeks. I didn't respond to it in the moment. Just gave one of those short half smiles and a yeah, maybe. But something about what he said stayed buried under everything else I was juggling. It made me reevaluate the entire last year of my life. See, up until that point, I thought I'd just been coping. Surviving. Using rules as armor because nothing else made sense. But he was right. I wasn't just following rules, I was using them. I had turned obedience into a language no one else knew how to speak. And that gave me power in situations where I'd always felt powerless. After that, I started paying attention to where else that showed up. In class, when professors handed out rubrics and vague guidelines, I stuck to them like gospel, and suddenly I wasn't just a student, I was the example. Other people started asking to see my papers before submitting their own. At my part-time campus job in the library, when the supervisor said we could organize the archives however we saw fit, I requested a list of the original system, stuck to it letter by letter, and within a month I was offered a promotion. Rules gave me structure, but more than that, they gave me leverage. And once I saw that, I couldn't unsee it, but it wasn't until I went home for winter break that I realized just how far I'd come. My parents picked me up at the bus station. The drive home was quiet, not uncomfortable, but cautious. Like we were all waiting to see what version of each other we'd meet. The house looked the same. Same hardwood floors, same smell of pine cleaner, same refrigerator hum. But there was no list on the fridge this time. Just a magnet with a picture of our family from a few years ago. All 3 of us smiling like none of this had ever happened. We didn't talk about the past. Not directly. My mom asked about my grades. My dad asked if I liked my roommate. I answered everything clearly, politely, but without the precision I used to weaponize. And I noticed something else, they were the ones being careful now. Not like they were afraid of me, but like they'd seen what could happen when they tried to outrule someone who knew how to bend every line into a blade. They didn't try to enforce anything that week. They didn't comment when I stayed up reading until midnight. Didn't say a word when I brought my food into the living room and watched an old movie on their TV. My mom passed me the blanket without hesitation. The only time anything even remotely close to tension came up was 2 days before I left. My dad and I were fixing a loose hinge on the back door. Simple job. I held the flashlight while he turned the screws. He said, you know, when we made those rules, we thought we were doing the right thing. I didn't say anything. He added, you followed them better than we ever could have imagined. That scared us. I nodded. It scared me too. That was it. No long apology. No dramatic breakthrough. Just an honest moment between two people who finally saw each other as more than roles. Not father and son. Just men. People who had done what they thought they had to, and had been changed by it. The night before I left, I found a sticky note on my suitcase. It said, "No more rules. Just dinner at 7 if you're around." Mom. I kept that note in my wallet for 2 years. And here's the thing most people don't get, especially the ones who hear this story and think it's just about petty revenge or being a smartass. I wasn't trying to punish anyone. I was trying to prove that I wasn't the problem. That maybe, just maybe, the way they set the rules was. And when I followed them exactly, they finally saw that. They built a box, and I lived inside it perfectly. Quietly. Precisely. Until the only thing they heard echoing back was their own voice. And that's when they realized the rules weren't meant to be followed. They were meant to be used. Spring semester brought its own kind of storm. Not the dramatic kind, but the slow building pressure that creeps in when life feels too balanced, too quiet. I wasn't trying to test myself. But I started to notice that the rules I'd built for myself, the ones I thought were survival tools, had started becoming something else entirely, expectations. Not from others. From me. I didn't just follow the structure anymore, I needed it. Craved it. And that scared me more than anything my parents ever did. It showed up in subtle ways. I couldn't enjoy group projects. If someone didn't respond to emails within 24 hours, I'd feel like I was falling behind, even if I wasn't. I rewrote entire reports just because someone used inconsistent bullet spacing. I wasn't trying to be controlling. I just couldn't turn it off. The need to clean it up. To make it make sense. Kyle noticed. We were doing our taxes, well, I was helping him figure out his, and halfway through, he looked at me and said, "Do you even like being this organized?" I didn't answer, not because I didn't know, but because I wasn't sure what like had to do with it. He pushed a little further. Seriously, if no one was watching, no one judging you, would you still do all this? And that hit me harder than I expected. Because deep down, I knew the answer. Yes, I would. Even if no one ever saw the spreadsheets or color-coded syllabi or perfectly organized playlists, I'd still make them. Because it wasn't about winning anymore. It was about control in a world that made me feel small when I didn't have any. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized, maybe there was a way to let some of it go. I started small. One morning, I left my bed unmade. Not by accident, on purpose. The sun hit the sheets weird, and the blanket had this wrinkle that looked like a scar. I left it, sat at my desk, pretended I didn't notice, and for the first 20 minutes, I couldn't focus on anything else. But by the hour mark, I'd forgotten. The next day, I left my planner shut. Didn't touch it for 24 hours. The sky didn't fall, the world didn't end, and the day after that, I said yes to Kyle's invite to a bar trivia night, even though it was on a Wednesday, and I had reading due the next morning. That night, I got home at 12:42 a.m. Late, messy, happy. That shift was slow, subtle. I didn't suddenly stop being who I was. I still cleaned the counters when I thought no one was looking. Still filed emails into folders with insane precision. But I also stopped needing everyone else to mirror me. I let Kyle pile his laundry on the chair. I let strangers be inconsistent. And it felt like freedom. Real freedom. Not the kind that comes from rebellion, but from choice. There was one moment that sealed it, though. It was late April. Campus was blooming again. That Sunday, my mom called. Just a normal check-in. We talked for 20 minutes about nothing. Weather, groceries, the neighbor's new dog, and at the end of the call, she said, "You sound different." I asked how. She paused and said, "Like you're not holding your breath anymore." I didn't know what to say to that. Because I hadn't realized I'd been holding it. But she wasn't wrong. Later that night, I found an old envelope tucked into a drawer in my desk. Something I'd packed from home months ago and forgotten about. It was the list, the one from the fridge. Faded ink, creased in half. I read it slowly, one rule at a time. And then I tore it in half. Not as a symbol, not to feel powerful, just because I didn't need it anymore. I flushed the pieces down the toilet. Turned off the bathroom light. Went to bed. Left the door half open. Summer break came faster than expected. The kind of fast where you don't realize how much time has passed until someone says, "Finals are next week," and your first instinct isn't panic, it's confusion. Like time skipped a beat and you're not sure if you missed something or just outgrew the clock you were living by. I passed all my classes. Not just passed, I did well. Not because I was trying to prove anything anymore. But because the rhythm I'd built for myself, even softened, still kept me grounded. I studied when I needed to. Showed up, finished things, but now I allowed room to breathe, too. Kyle moved out a week early, internship in Chicago. He left me a sticky note on the back of the door. All it said was, "You're not a robot. Never were. Don't forget that." I kept it. It wasn't sentimental. It was grounding. When I got home for summer break, the house felt smaller. Not physically, it was the same layout. Same creaky third stair, same humming fridge. but I'd changed shape since the last time I was inside it. I didn't walk in like I was stepping onto a chessboard anymore. I just walked in, and they didn't treat me like a piece on one either. No fridge list, no schedule, just soft, hesitant normalcy. The first dinner was quiet, but not in the strained way. More like everyone was watching each other's eyes, trying to figure out who they'd become since last time. I didn't rush to fill the silence. They didn't try to control the mood. We just ate. At the end of the week, I got a job at a local print shop downtown. Not glamorous, not permanent, but good money and decent people. The manager was a guy named Ron, old school, sarcastic, ran the place like a diner kitchen. Rules posted everywhere, no phones, no leaning, no talking during press runs. And the best part? I didn't hate it, because the rules weren't emotional. They weren't weapons, they were functional. Everyone followed them because they made the machines run smoother and the team work faster. There was no judgment tied to it. No moral value. One day Ron said, "You're like clockwork, kid. You ever serve in the military or something?" I laughed. Worse. I was 17 with parents who had a clipboard and a vision board. He laughed, but not unkindly. Just nodded. Well, whatever they drilled into you, it stuck. I didn't correct him, but that night, I thought about what he said. Because I realized something, I'd built that clock myself. Out of scraps. From broken instructions and passive-aggressive expectations. And even when I hated it, even when it made me sick, I'd still wound it up every morning and let it tick. But now I could choose what time it ran on. One Friday in July, my mom knocked on my bedroom door. She didn't wait for me to answer before opening it, but she didn't step in either. Just leaned against the frame and looked around. "Your room's cleaner than it used to be," she said. I shrugged. Force of habit. She nodded. "Do you ever wish we'd handled things differently?" It wasn't an apology, but it also wasn't a trap. I said, "Yeah, sometimes." Then she asked something I didn't expect. "Do you think we made you like this?" And I answered honestly, "I think you taught me to survive a system by becoming better at it than the people who built it. The rest, I figured out on my own." She didn't say anything after that. Just nodded and left. Closed the door gently. The next morning, she made pancakes. Mine were already on the plate when I came into the kitchen. She didn't say a word about the fact that I was 10 minutes late. Neither did I, because we were past that now. August came in heavy with heat and quiet tension, the kind of quiet that doesn't mean something's wrong, just that no one's filling the space with anything unnecessary anymore. We coexisted like adults for the first time. I woke up, made my coffee, they asked if I needed the car. I folded laundry without being told. We shared the same house without stepping on each other's routines. It felt like truce. One night, my dad was watching TV in the living room, some procedural drama with a detective who looked permanently exhausted. I walked past to grab a glass of water, and he muted it as I stepped in. "You ever think about what you want to do after school?" he asked. It caught me off guard. Not the question, just the fact that it wasn't loaded. There was no speech waiting behind it. Just genuine curiosity. "Not exactly," I said. "I like systems, patterns, clean outcomes." He smiled. "That checks out." Then, after a pause, "You know we were trying to help, right?" "Back then." I nodded. "I know. You were just helping in the only language you understood." He didn't argue, didn't try to reframe it. Just nodded back and unmuted the TV. That was all we needed. I'd started journaling again over the summer. Nothing poetic, just short lines, observations, reflections. I didn't realize I was doing it until I had a whole notebook filled. One entry stood out. I wrote it late one night after work. The day I stopped following the rules to prove something, I started making space for the version of me that never got to exist. That version was quieter, not in the performative, let me punish you with my silence way. Just more present, more curious, less reactive. I read more, took walks at night, started sitting on the front porch again, something I hadn't done since I was 15 and they told me not to loiter like a weirdo. But now, no one said anything. My mom brought me tea once. Just set it down and sat beside me. We didn't talk, didn't need to. When it was time to head back to campus, they offered to drive me. I said I'd be fine with the bus. They didn't push, didn't guilt trip, just helped me load my bag and handed me an envelope. Inside was a card, plain white, no glitter, no cheesy quote. Just a short message in my dad's handwriting. "You followed the rules better than anyone. Now go learn when not to." I didn't cry, but I folded the card neatly and kept it in the same pocket as Kyle's sticky note. Fall semester was different. I signed up for fewer classes. Started volunteering at a youth center off campus, just organizing supplies, helping with homework, little stuff. There was one kid, 12, maybe 13, who reminded me a lot of myself. Always quiet, always watching, polite to the point of defensiveness. One afternoon, he was organizing pencils by color. I said, "You like when things are in order?" He nodded without looking up. "You do it for you," I said. "Or so no one else gets to call it messy first?" He stopped, looked at me. I smiled and added, "You don't have to answer." Just think about it. He did. And I realized in that moment, this wasn't about control anymore. It wasn't about revenge or power or survival. It was about breaking the cycle. Passing on something better. I don't know where all this ends. Maybe I'll always have a part of me that reaches for the rulebook when things get hard. Maybe I'll always keep my planner color-coded, my clothes folded edge to edge. But now I know why, and that's enough. Fall settled in like a quiet exhale. The kind of season where everything slows down just enough for your brain to catch up with your body. I wasn't the kind of person to notice the leaves changing, not before, but now, I caught myself staring at them on the walk between classes. Orange, burnt red, gold like old paper. Little signals that time was still moving, whether I was measuring it or not. I kept volunteering at the youth center. Just twice a week, but it anchored me in a way I didn't expect. The routine wasn't strict. There was no list on the wall. No laminated rule chart, but the rhythm was consistent: arrive, check in, help where needed. Sometimes I sorted books. Sometimes I played board games with kids who didn't want to do their homework. Sometimes I just sat quietly beside a teenager who didn't want to talk but didn't want to be alone either. One of them, Malik, latched onto me quick. 12 years old, head always buried in a sketchpad. Always drawing. Never spoke unless he had to. The first time I saw him organize his markers into perfect gradients, something hit me in the chest. I asked him, "You sort them that way every time?" He nodded. I said, "Makes you feel like the page won't get out of control if your tools behave, right?" He froze. Didn't answer. Just looked at me like I'd read his mind. I didn't say anything else. Just sat with him. Let him get back to drawing. That's how it started. Every Tuesday and Thursday, we'd sit at the same table. He'd draw. I'd help other kids with fractions or spelling or whatever. But I always ended up back beside Malik. One day, he showed me a sketch, 2 characters, standing across from each other. Same clothes. Same face. One had a chain wrapped around his chest. The other had keys in his hand. I pointed. "Which one are you?" He shrugged. I didn't press. But the next time I saw him, he handed me the page folded in half. On the back he'd written, "Both." And I got it. Because I still was, too. There were days when I slipped. Days I woke up and needed the structure so badly it made my stomach hurt. I'd line up my notebooks by margin spacing, rewrite notes that were already clear just to feel in control again. Sometimes I'd even time my showers, not because anyone told me to, but because the silence in there felt too unpredictable without a countdown. But then there were other days. Days when I left the bed messy on purpose. Ate cereal straight from the box while standing in the hallway. Let my socks sit on the floor without consequence. And on those days, I felt human. I started dating someone in October. Her name was Noelle. We met in the campus library. Classic, I know. She dropped her coffee on my table. I made a joke about caffeine damage being irreversible. She laughed, said she was sorry. I said, "It's fine. Just don't let it happen again." Deadpan. She blinked, then smiled, slow. "You always this formal?" "No," I said, "only when it keeps people guessing." We talked for 2 hours that day. She wasn't like me. She was late to everything. Left books half read. Listened to 3 songs at once with her headphones tangled in her coat pocket. But she saw things. Little details. People's tells. Emotional rhythms. "You move like you're trying not to cause ripples," she said once. "Like even your stillness is cautious." I didn't deny it. Because it was true. But she didn't try to fix me. Didn't try to pull me out of it or drag me into her mess. She just made space. Left room. And over time, I learned how to stand in it. One night in November, we were walking back from a late-night diner. She asked, "What's the weirdest thing you've ever done out of pure obedience?" I stopped walking. Looked up at the trees. Thought for a while. Then I told her the story. The whole thing. The list. The precision. The week where I followed every rule to the letter until my parents couldn't take it anymore. How I'd weaponized my own restraint like a scalpel. How they had no idea what to do with a kid who gave them everything they asked for and nothing they actually wanted. I expected her to laugh. Or maybe shake her head like it was some quirky anecdote. But she just said, "That's not weird. That's tactical." I asked, "You think it was wrong?" She said, "I think it was survival. And I think you were smart enough to know how to do it without bleeding." Then, after a beat, "But you don't have to keep doing it. You're not trapped anymore." And that stuck with me. Harder than anything else. Because I hadn't even realized I still believed I was. Thanksgiving came and went without fanfare. I stayed on campus with Noelle instead of going home, not out of spite. Just because it felt right. My parents didn't push. My mom texted me a photo of the turkey and a single line. "Save room for next year." No guilt, no pressure, just space. That weekend, Noelle and I were at her apartment, half watching some old crime doc, half playing a game we made up, rules you'd break if no one knew. Hers were wild, singing in libraries, stealing salt shakers from diners, walking backwards down escalators. Mine were quieter. I'd leave a light on during the day. I said, "Waste electricity." She raised an eyebrow. "Rebel." I laughed. "It's not about the light. It's about permission. She tilted her head. You think you still need it? That question haunted me in the best possible way. Because I'd been out of that house for years. Free, technically. Independent. No rules taped to the fridge, no curfews, no silent punishments. But I still carried that list, not in my bag, not in my wallet, but somewhere deeper. Muscle memory. A reflex I hadn't challenged in a long time. And it made me wonder, if you've trained yourself to survive within rules, who are you when they disappear? Finals came and went. I passed everything, even took an elective I didn't need, just to see if I could enjoy something without turning it into a metric. I could. Not always, but sometimes. The last week before winter break, Malik handed me a drawing. No note this time, just an image. A figure sitting in a chair with invisible strings tied to their arms. On the floor beside them, a pair of scissors. Untouched. I looked at him, he looked back, and I said, you don't have to cut them all at once. He smiled. The first time I'd seen him really do that. Christmas at home was quiet again, not tense. Just calm. We exchanged gifts. I helped cook. My mom asked me how Noel was. My dad asked if I still organized my notes by weight of the paper. I said yes. We laughed. Before I left, my mom handed me a small box. Inside, a folded piece of paper. The original rule list. Rewritten. But not rules this time. Just 5 short lines. Speak kindly. Rest when you need to. Say what you mean. Let go of what hurts you. You're not a problem to solve. No signature. No explanation. I folded it. Put it in my coat pocket. Didn't cry. But later that night, when I found myself turning off the hallway light and reaching to straighten the hand towel for no reason, I stopped. Left it crooked. And walked away. Because the thing no one tells you is that obedience, once it's been your entire survival strategy, feels safe even when it's choking you. Letting go isn't dramatic. It's quiet. It's choosing not to fix the wrinkle. It's letting the sock stay on the floor. It's breathing when there's nothing left to brace for. So no, I don't regret following the rules. I just finally know when not to.